Welcome to episode 263 of Control the Controllables. And in today's episode, we have August Holmgren. August had an incredible run a few weeks ago at Wimbledon, where he came through the qualifying rounds and reached the third round, including two epic 5-set matches. Second one against Matchek in the second round, before playing Alex De Minaur and losing in the third round. And then a couple of weeks later, he went straight on to Granby, where he won the Challenger and showed that it was time for August to start really making a move. And anyone that follows college tennis will know that he made the NCAA finals, where he lost in the final in 3 sets to a certain Ben Shelton. You guys are going to absolutely love this episode. You're going to love his mindset. There's so much to take from it. And I'm excited to pass you over to August Holmgren. So August Holmgren, a big welcome to Control the Controllables. How are you doing?
Thank you very much, Dan. I'm happy to be here. Doing quite well. I'm sitting in my hotel room here in Lexington.
You're looking better than you were on court at the end of the match last night. You know, in that heat stroke got you in Lexington. Tell us a little bit about that from last night, August.
Yeah, I mean, he took down another one. Old story, right? But I was feeling good. Up until when the match started, I was playing decent in the beginning of the match, and then we had a long first set. I went through 4 t-shirts and had to change my shoes because I was sweating through the shoes and the socks at 5-4 in the first set. So I was just sweating a bunch, and towards the middle of the second set, I was starting to feel a little bit dizzy and got a little bit of a headache. And it just progressively got worse. I really, for some reason, I really didn't want to retire. With my game style, maybe I can get away with staying in the match with a couple good serves, and then I thought maybe I can have one game where I just connect on a few returns. So we'll see what happens. And then I just hit my limit at 5-1, 30-15, and had to run to the side to puke, and that was it. So, but it happens sometimes. But as I said, I'm doing well now. I just have to recover Nederland.
And I would imagine that Denmark has not prepared you for that sort of heat over the last 20 years.
Yeah, not really. We do get warm temperatures in the summer in Denmark, but not combined with this kind of humidity over a longer period of time. But yeah, even when I was in San Diego, it didn't really get this humid either.
Yeah.
So I think the last time I tried something to this extent was when I was in Bali for my preseason with Jesper de Jong and Gijs Brouwer. It was tough there too.
And it's almost like the thing that I find fascinating about this sport. You know, you're 27 years old, obviously still very young, but quite experienced now. You know, you've had your junior career, you've had your college career, you've been on the tour for a little while now. And we're going to get into all those exciting things in a little bit, but I guess you're still learning all the time, you know, and you now have another challenge, right? A challenge that, you know, maybe your body hasn't quite reacted in the way that you want it to react in extreme weather. So what will your process and protocol be now on how you find the right solutions to that?
Yeah, it's a good question, because it's happened to me 3 times this year now. I was playing in Numea in the first week of the year, where I ended up throwing up during the match as well. And it happened 2 weeks ago, right after the match in the first round in Granby. Those times I didn't feel the dizziness and the headache. It was just in the stomach, and with just ended up puking all of a sudden. But what was interesting is yesterday after the match, I had my blood sugar levels tested, and it was way too low. So I'm going to talk with my nutritionist and my physio and see if we can come up with a strategy to somehow find a way to get more carbs in me, or more electrolytes, or something to adjust for these extreme heat conditions. because I sweat so much, and I don't know what it'll be, because there's a fine balance between drinking enough and drinking so much that I'll get a stomach cramp, or I can't, my body can't absorb it, and then it's just, going around in the stomach, not really helping anything.
Well, the rumor, look, when I have these amazing guests like yourself on this podcast, August, I make sure I have the right conversations beforehand, because I need to find things out about you. One of the things I always say to the producer is, find me some things that you can't Google within 10 minutes. I think sometimes it's too easy to Google things, and I think it's about understanding. And one of my bits of research took me to the point that you can get quite hangry at times, and that maybe food is something that is very much needed in your life, which for me links into this, right? It sounds like you got a pretty quick metabolism. It sounds like you're someone who does lose calories, lose fluids pretty quickly, so that's someone, like we watch Carlos Alcaraz play, it looks like he never sweats, like it's like everyone's got their different bodies, and it's got different bodies, got different ways that they react to different things. Do you think there's a link here between the hangriness and the dehydration?
Maybe. I can't tell you that. I'm sure I get more frustrated when I'm hangry, but speaking on as for my on-court strategy, I try to eat about 100 calories, or 100 grams of carbs per hour in fluid form, and then supplement with some gels and such. So usually I don't really feel hungry on the court.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't have a better answer to the hangriness part.
No. I just think it's interesting. The big takeaway for me is that it's just constant learning, right? And it's like, and as we kind of jump into, there's so much I want to get into. I obviously want to get into your Wimbledon run, which was incredible, and just Wimbledon this year was fantastic. There just was so many emotional runs that seemed to be happening with people, and I was glued to the TV as you won that 7-6 in the fifth set match. And I have to say there might have been a tear in my eye when I saw you hugging your dad at the end. That was a special moment. But we're gonna get to that. But I like to start and understand the context of people's lives a little bit as well. And again, looking into your life, I know you ended up having a reasonable ITF junior ranking, but I also understand that you weren't necessarily the top of the top when you first started playing. The word on the street is you're someone who was a very hard worker from a young age, was able to kind of really set your own standards, which is brilliant. If I take you back to that one, when did you start playing tennis? And the question I like to ask people is, how did this sport get into your blood? Because it gets into so many of our blood, and we can't get rid of it, and we don't want to get rid of it. But tell me a little bit about that journey.
Yeah, well, I started when I was 4. It was my father who introduced me to tennis. We'd go out and play about once a month, I think. And then when I was 6, I started in the local club in the city where I lived, and it was always really, really fun. And then I think I decided that I wanted to play professionally from when I was 10 years old. Since then, I got introduced I met a lot of really, really good people who guided me along the right path of being process driven, which was always quite easy for me because, as you said, I didn't really have any big results early in my career, so I didn't get used to winning a lot. So I had to find a different motivator. But I always enjoyed the aspect of having something to improve upon, and I always thought that was really, really exciting about tennis. And in tennis, as in with, I'm sure, all the other aspects of a craft, you can always get better. So I started traveling with this group called EuroElite Tennis when I was 11 years old. It was run by an American based in Sweden named David Bandelin, former college coach as well, and he was really tough in many ways in terms of being professional in our approach towards the sport and towards the work. And that's where I kind of built I got to learn my foundation of discipline, I guess. And I really, really enjoyed that. And so it's always stuck to me in everything I work, in all the things I work with. It came very natural to me to work hard. And then when I turned 16, I usually say that that's when I kind of became quote unquote good within Danish tennis. Yep. That's when I won the first junior championships in my age group. And I got my first junior ITF point when I was 15 in Kenya. I would travel all over the world with EuroLeague. And yeah, I just slowly got better and better over time. That's always been my way of developing, just constant growth, little by little. And I guess that's also why I didn't break through. Not to say I have broken through, not at all, but I haven't had that soaring breakthrough in the rankings. And because it's always been a little bit here, a little bit down, a little bit up, a little bit down, slowly progressing that way. And that's been
so interesting.
Yeah, that's I guess that's been my modus operandi for my entire career.
What's interesting for that with me is I think there would be a lot more players that happened to if they allowed it to. But we live in this kind of instant gratification world. We live in this world that's very outcome focused. We live in this comparison world. We live in all these toxicities that kind of come in, right? And that can either be fueled from the environment you're training in, that can be fueled from coaches you're working with or other players you're around, but it can also be fueled by parents as well. And often parents don't mean to. What was the influence from your parents on that? Because it just, even speaking to you now, and I was lucky enough to briefly meet you at Wimbledon, you've clearly got your head on your shoulders. You're someone I would look at as quite typically Danish. Holger, who we've had on the podcast, I've always said is quite untypically Danish, in many ways, but that kind of unassuming way, but just kind of bit by bit, you're doing your thing. How much do you think that was of influence from your parental and family upbringing?
I don't know. I'd say it's more influence from my tennis coaches. And one of my coaches, Jonas Svensson, I've been with since I was 10 years old. And we've always just been grinding away little by little. I really appreciate my parents' approach to my tennis because they've always been in the background. They've always just said, okay, we let your coaches decide what the best approach is. And then they've just been supportive.
Which is kind of my point, August, though. That's my point I think I was trying to get to. That's the influence I'm talking about, the influence of giving space, because I think in order to have that outlook that you've got and that kind of small gains, moving up, moving down a bit, moving up, and kind of making that way through without too much panic, I do think you have to come or have parental influence that allows for that space to happen. Rather than
in that case,
we're paying for this. We're paying for this. This needs to happen.
Yeah. Well, in that case, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, that my parents have always just said, do it if it makes you happy, and if it doesn't, there's no love lost at all. So they never applied that kind of pressure.
It's fun. So that moves me into something I'd love to ask you as well. Is when I first set up the Soto Tennis Academy out here in Spain 15 years ago, I did a promotional video. And on that promotional video, I said, players make players, coaches don't make players. That was something I felt quite strongly about. Now that I've coached and been lucky enough to be around a high level of tennis for the last 15 years, but more specifically the last 5 or 6, I don't know if I fully believe that. I think I still believe that to a degree, but I think I understand more and more the influence of coaches. And I guess the one that I've worked closely with, Louis Kaye, he's now been involved in just so many British Wimbledon or Grand Slam champions. It's and before that nobody ever won them. So what's your take on that? How influential are coaches, and if so, what are the biggest influences coaches can have, certainly in those kind of earlier years?
I would think that the coaches have a tremendous influence not because they're coaches, or not only because they're coaches, but because they're people that you spend a lot of time around. And in the same way, I wouldn't disagree with your claim that players make players either, because I think it's a common social experiment, right? That you kind of adopt the mannerisms and tendencies of the people that you surround yourself with. An easy example that I can think of here is the difference between being at a futures tournament and being at a challenger tournament. One of the first differences that I noticed when I made that change is that in challenger tournaments, you don't really see anyone not warming up, not doing a cool down, not using the physios. They're all very, very professional in their approach to the matches. Whereas in futures tournaments, you can come across a lot of people that are great tennis players, but not have as professional of an approach. I think it's something that's also common in tennis clubs, some tennis clubs in Denmark, and I guess everywhere, right? If you have those role models that you can see, oh, that guy is good and he's doing or she's doing this and that, it makes it so much easier for oneself to also do those things. Whereas if you see your friend or your practice buddy, oh, okay, he just shows up 5 minutes before practice starts, then it makes it more okay for me to do the same. Whereas if everyone shows up 30 minutes early and then you show up 10 minutes early, and they're like, okay, where were you? Right? It adds that kind of social pressure, peer pressure, to do the right things, which is a very good use of peer pressure. I think put in relation to the usual negative connotations that it has. So I think that for me, that's more the what I would say is my takeaway from that players make players or coaches make players. I think people make people.
Yeah, very good.
Yeah.
That's a nice little summary on it. In terms of the bit you're saying, so if I take you, I've still got you as young. I'm still keeping you as a junior right now. You haven't reached 16. You're not winning yet. Were you at that age? I get the impression maybe you were a little bit of a black sheep at that age, of kind of doing things maybe a bit more professionally than others. Would I be right in thinking that?
I think so. Yeah. I don't know if I was always doing the right things, but I was always trying to do as much as I could to with my knowledge to be better.
Yeah. So how did you avoid the negative connotation of peer pressure? Because I've always said this, and I think the British tennis culture does this better now. But when I was younger, the black sheep was the one that was doing it right. And when I set up the academy in Spain, one of the first things I wrote down is I want the black sheep to be the one that's doing it wrong. Because, and that, for me, that's a big cultural difference, because I think when the black sheep is the one that's doing it correct, that can be quite a lonely, difficult place. How were you able to not give in to the peer pressure that was around you of maybe not doing the right things?
It was never an issue for me.
Okay.
It's never been difficult for me to say no to the things I didn't want. I don't know why, and maybe it has to do with my upbringing or with the people I'm around. But yeah, to do my stuff, and to, when I was in college, to not go out in the evenings and not drink and all that stuff. It was never difficult at all.
What an unbelievable skill that is. And I think the fact that you find that like as a normal skill, I think that's such a massive quality that you've got that's clearly played into the successes that you've had really as well, and will continue to have, because I think so many of us in life can live our lives constantly worried about what other people think, and we're so influenced, even more so now, right, in the social media world that's out there. There's so many different distractions, and I see it. I've got 3 kids. I see it with my kids. All of a sudden they're doing something, or they're saying something, or they're acting in a certain way, and it's like, hold on a minute, that's not you. That's like. Can you so that again? So I want to move it into something else along that lines, because I'm kind of fascinated by this. This is a brilliant topic. Performing arts was a part of your world, a big part of your world, which I'd love you to tell me a bit more about. Do you think it was linked to that in any way?
Maybe. I think that came before the performing arts. I went to college thinking I was going to be a philosophy major. And then after a year, I decided that wasn't for me. Then I spent the next year kind of deciding what I thought should be my major. I went back and forth between a few different subjects. And, in the US, you have 2 years to declare a major. At that point, I said, okay, I've taken a theater class every semester. It's been my favorite class every semester. So I might as well study what I enjoy the most. It just made a lot of sense to me. From a peer pressure standpoint, it's a very uncommon major or education, and it took my parents about 2 weeks to get on board with it too.
Okay.
But
before college, had you done that quite a bit as well? Had you been
no,
in
not
that
at all.
world before?
Not at all.
Oh, not at
all. I come from a family of where we're very expressive. Like we have a lot of like when we meet, we try and meet up once or twice per year, and then we do a lot of like singing together as a family tradition. And when we were really young, we put on like a small place in the in our my grandparents had a summer house, and then the whole on my mother's side, her whole side of the family would come. And then when we were like 7-8 years old, we were ranging from 15 to like 5 years old, and then we'd all have different roles. But I hadn't done anything of the sort my whole life,
right? Okay.
Except for like the odd school play in 2nd or 3rd grade or something, like Oliver Twist and that stuff. So no, it came as a surprise to me to do that stuff.
And what did that entail, doing your major in that?
Yeah, well, the theater major as a bachelor entails an introduction to the many different branches of theater. There's the things that you think about when you think of theater. You got the acting, the directing, the scenic design, costume design, but it's also critical analysis of scripts, writing, it's learning history, it's production managing, taking care of the money side of it, and obviously public speaking. So it's a different introduction to the many different aspects of the theater world. And then if you do a master's degree, that's when you kind of own in on that one particular subject. And what I thought was really cool about the theater education is that you often had to bring your own analysis on the different subjects and figure out things for yourself. And in the acting classes and such, you had to be really sometimes vulnerable, not so often vulnerable, but more so put yourself out there in uncomfortable situations and talking in front of the class. But it was in such a safe environment that everyone were doing it, and that made it really cool. So that was one of the things that really was appealing to me with the theater major.
And in terms of picking to go to college, you were 83 in the world in juniors. At that point, you were obviously one of the best players, if not the best player in Denmark. Was making the decision to go out to college to play a difficult decision? Was that always part of the plan? And then how did you then pick University of San Diego? What was that process as well?
Yeah, no, it was a super easy decision. I still think if you're not at least winning futures by the time you're 18, then there's no reason not to go to college, even more so now than ever, with the NIL deals that you can get if you're good enough. So it wasn't a question at all. I had no chance of having any kind of impact with my level when I was 18. So I knew I was going to go to college. Then in the process, I had this spreadsheet with different questions, and I spoke to all the schools that reached out to me. I think there were about 30 schools that I was on Skype meetings with, and I ended up narrowing it down to first 5 schools and then 2 schools, San Diego and Rice University. And I went to visit them. I really, really liked San Diego. I felt at home. I really liked the way I liked the coaches at both those schools, and I just felt much more at home in San Diego. So that's how that decision came about.
And in terms of college tennis, for people that don't know about college tennis, how good is it? I'm lucky. I went to LSU, so I know. But somebody listening right now that's thinking, should I go to college? What should I do? Tell us about that experience.
Yeah, it's if you're at the right place, it's an amazing experience. If you're at the wrong place, it can be a pretty tough one. So you have to find a good place. I was very lucky that I ended up with amazing coaches and teammates. Yeah, for a lot of, and the level you can see with all these guys breaking through that were in the top of college tennis are making big waves in the world of tennis right now. Shelton being the best example, right? But you also got Walton in the top 100, Fernley. Even before that, you had Norrie, who played 2 or 3 years at TCU. Isner, Anderson, all those guys. So the level in college is really, really high. So that's not an argument for why you shouldn't go to college, that you can't find good enough sparring, especially if you compare the setup at colleges in the US to the setup that you can have in Denmark. It's so much better unless you just have a lot of resources or a lucky setup in Denmark, because in the US you have the coaches, teammates, physios, fitness trainers, psychologists, nutritionists, all in one place. So it's really hard to beat. Plus you have the social aspect that you don't really get as easily when you play professional.
If you didn't go to college, do you think you'd still be playing?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Because that's 5 years, right? You were there for 5 years, I believe. You redshirted 1 year. Looking at your college record as
no, we got it. No, we got the
extra one with COVID.
Extra one from COVID, exactly.
You got the COVID, yeah. So you got the 5 years, but even like looking through, it's really interesting because it's that like just getting better, getting a bit better each year. What number did you play at San Diego in year 1?
I switched between playing 1 and 2 first 3 years. I started pretty strong. I started as number 2 for the majority of the first year. Played 1 a few times.
Made NCAA's year 1. Didn't make NCAA's year 2. Is that right? I don't know if my information
I made it
correct.
Not in singles, but I made it in doubles.
Doubles. Okay. So in singles, and then in your 5th year, made the final of the singles and lost to a certain Ben Shelton.
Yes.
In 3 sets. And at that point, because Ben had a very interesting college career as well, right? He obviously, his dad was his coach. He did start a bit lower in the lineup at University of Florida, and then he seemed to grow, seemed to develop this serve. And how good was he when you were playing him at that point?
At that point, his serve was already unbelievable. Like his kick serve was bouncing up over my head. I had to return it up here, and he could mask his serve so well, so I had no idea if it was a slice or if it was a kick. And he's so big, and yet he's an unbelievable athlete. So especially in the NCAA, we played twice. He beat me both times, and in the NCAA tournament, I came out quite well, but throughout the match, he just got better and better and better, and by the end, I had no idea what to do. Because he just, every time I made him run to the forehand, he would slap a forehand winner down the line. It's like, okay, too good. What do I do?
So he was ready. He was ready to go, wasn't he? When he left college.
Yeah, he was ready.
He was, which obviously showed. It was, question that comes into my head when I speak to someone like you, August, is at what stage did you decide you wanted to be a professional tennis player? And then I've got a follow-up question to that.
When
Do
I
you
was
remember
10 years
what
old.
age you? So when you were 10, so you knew that early. At what age did you believe that you could be?
I think at 10 as well.
And has that faltered throughout? Has there been any times where you've thought it's not possible throughout that period?
I've never faltered on a base belief, but many times after match losses, I've had the demons, the demons we all have in the head. They're saying, why are you doing this? You're shit. Why you can't even? You're losing first round of qualifying in a 15K futures. Meanwhile, Tsitsipas and Shapovalov are beating the top 10 players in the world. So yeah, there's been rough patches every now and then, but my base belief has never really faltered.
I love it. I love it. And that's for me what belief is, right? Like we talk about confidence and belief. Belief for me is that base thing that you're talking about. That it's inside. Confidence it can ebb and flow depending on our recent past experiences. And it seems like that's held strong. What's the lowest point of your career when you look back? Was there a point where things got really low, or you seem like someone that can stayed quite even?
I think 2 years ago, I was struggling a lot. I was on a 5-match losing streak. I've never really had a very successful spring season in my three years as a professional player. I'm a summer guy, exactly. Summer and fall guy. And so that first summer after graduating that was really hard. And it was just because I was losing, and I was also looking like a loser as I was losing. And feeling like a loser, just feeling so sorry for myself.
We've all been there.
So it wasn't a good spot, and it was my coaches that got me through that one. I was with Freddie Nielsen at the time, and he we went to a tournament in Nottingham. He took me aside and said, "Okay, I just lost. I was playing 2 tournaments in Nottingham. I just lost the first week," and he was like, "Okay, now we're gonna do a deal. You have these, I think it was 6 things we were working on, and you're only going to think of those things every time you step onto the court." It had to do with, I had to take as many steps as possible whenever I was playing. So I would be gassed after 2 minutes of hitting through the middle, because I was just absolutely trying to work like my feet were drumsticks.
That's unfair for Freddie to ask you to do something he didn't used to do.
Well, Freddie had a different kind of feel. And then I had to walk really fast in between the points. I had to always look up. I could never walk and look down. I had to get my backhand to go through the baseline as quickly as possible, and forget the last 2 things. But just like really basic things like those, and that became everything I was obsessed with. And then I ended up winning the next tournament, which was a big help and got me out of that slump right away. But it was so funny that as soon as the focus became different, or got away from whether or not I won or lost, then it became so much easier to deal with setbacks in the matches.
It's the comments come into my head. Do coaches make players, or do players make coaches? Do coaches make players, or do players make players again? And I'll tell you why, because that's great coaching by Freddie. And Freddie, I hold in, it's a very good friend of mine, but I hold him in very, very high regard. Freddie's someone who's massively influenced my philosophy over the years. Any opportunity we get, we talk tennis. And I think he's got one of the best tennis brains out there. I love his way he thinks and his philosophies. But so that's great coaching by him. However, that's also great playing by you in terms of being able to take that on and then commit to it. Because so many, I guess, as coaches, one of the things we can do, we can take the horse to the water, but we can't make the horse drink the water. It's that whole concept. And, you being the player going, okay, I'm going to buy into that. and no matter what, that's what I'm going to do. And obviously, you got your reward quite quickly from that, But that also says a lot about you as a player to be able to do that. Because I honestly think a lot of players get that information, but actually don't actually put it into action, and that's then where your bigger challenges come as coaches as well.
Yeah, it was also easy to do because everything else I was trying to do clearly wasn't working. So I was very open to trying new things. And that's actually one of the things that we are focusing on a great deal right now, is that to stick with what's working when I'm winning as well. Because in my pro career so far, I've had all of my best results coming off of really tough times. In this year I was 6-14 before Wimbledon, and then all of a sudden I have a good run at Wimbledon. I win Granby, and I want to make sure to stay with the things that are working. One of the things I did last year after I won Porto and got into the top 200 was I got lulled into that trap of thinking, oh shit, I'm top 200 in the world. Now I have to play like a top 200 player. And then I put a totally different kind of expectation on my tennis. And it was really, really hurtful. Or it hurt my game a lot, because all of a sudden I didn't have that acceptance to easy mistakes anymore, because I thought, but I'm supposed to be better than this, so I can't miss a second serve return that's hit with 100 kilometers an hour. How in the world could this happen? Whereas when I was winning tournaments, I would miss them all day, and I didn't give it a second thought. So that's the challenge that I've had. Where
and your people will learn. I hope they will. They will learn so much from that last 2 minutes of you speaking on that. Because it's what you've done is you've given us layers. You've given us layers to process over outcome. I think it's one of the most cliche things people say is it's process over outcome. But you've given us some layers to that thought process, and understanding that protocols that you put in place and that you commit to. I call them committed, helpful attentions, and it's then. But there's many different distractions. There's not just the distraction of losing and playing badly. There's the distraction of complacency. There's the distraction of expectancy. There's many little things that will try and pull our minds into various different places. And before you know it, what we're doing is we're not actually committing to these little small things that add up into performing well. And I think you've described that really well. Now, I asked your lowest point. It's only fair that I also give you the chance to talk about your highest point to date. What would you say your highest point to date has been in your career?
It's tough to argue with the Wimbledon run, but I guess I was feeling more ecstatic after I won my first Challenger tournament in Porto Blanco in Spain last year.
That's near me. That's only about 2 hours from us. Yeah. Hot. Yeah, that would have really been hot at this time of year.
Yeah. But we played in the evenings and it was dry, so it wasn't so difficult.
I love that tournament. It's like a little. I don't know if you know the history of that tournament, but that tournament's been there for like 80 years. And,
really?
And it's always what they do in Spain is they host these events. There's a couple of great futures as well. That they used to be like community tournaments that were money tournaments, and then depending on where they're at, they're sometimes ITFs. So Pozoblanco was an ITF futures for quite a while. It was then a challenger. It then became just a money tournament, and it's kind of evolved. But there's always been that. I'm sure it was there. They had all the kind of activities for the kids and bouncy castles, and quite a lot of the town go to the tennis, and it's like a bit of a celebration of kind of sport in the area. So it's actually quite a famous tournament in Andalusia, our region in Spain. But it's a fantastic tournament. And tell us about that. Then that feeling. What is that feeling when you've won that title?
It was just so much happiness. However, what I wanted to say with that as well is that I'm not sure it's necessarily a good thing, because it was almost too much. Like when you get too high or you get too low, you can also get too high. Whereas 2 weeks later, when I won Porto, I felt way less excitement, but much more satisfaction. It was like, yeah, okay, I can do this. Like that,
Yeah.
I felt really cool. It wasn't like, yeah, like a crazy football fan. It was more like a really good day in the office where I did my work. I'm really satisfied with my work, and it's just such an interesting comparison between the different feelings of happiness, I guess. Actually, I forgot. Maybe the time I got most excited was when I won the full championship tournament at college in 2021. Because afterwards, it was in San Diego, and I celebrated it with all the guys there, and
You got the team.
I think that was the only time when I almost got drunk. I think it was such a good day.
You're showing off now,
Evening.
August. You're showing off with all of these high moments now, huh? You've had a privileged career to be able to talk about all of these
privileged career.
Already. Now, they are amazing, but I do have to take you to Wimbledon, and like you said, going into Wimbledon 6-14 on the year, turning up into qualifying, first round of qualifying, playing against a British guy who's tricky. He's tricky on the grass, and you come away from being a set down and win 7-5 in the third. Second round, Kikuchin, and you also are set down, and you come back and you win, winning a tiebreak in the second set. And then last round of qualies, I remember Freddie talking to me about this, but you're going to have to tell us about this last round qualifying match because it all happened. The full score, 6-4, 6-7, 3-6, 7-6, 13-11 in the tiebreak, and then 10-7 in the final set tiebreak, 7-6. Tell us a little bit about that match.
Yeah, that was a really cool match too against Watanabe. Yeah, we're both kind of trying to accomplish the same things with being aggressive off the serves and returns and controlling the points with our forehands. Watanabe is obviously a really, really well established and high level player. He's super quick, and there's very, very few places where I could really find a specific weakness in his game. So a lot of it had to do with just who could play the highest quality of tennis. And I started out really well. I think I just had one break, but I was holding serve quite simply, or I don't want to say easily, but I was hitting my spots pretty well. My serve +1 was working. I think I was up a break in the second set as well. And slowly he starts to tear his way back, hitting some big returns and kind of controlling the baseline rallies much more than he had in the first set. So then I lose the next two sets. I don't think there was any breaks in the fourth set, but I had no business in his service games at all. Like, he was just hitting his targets really well, and I think I was missing a bunch of returns as well. Not even hitting with high quality when I got it in. And then we get to the tiebreak, and I forget, I think he had 4 match points or 5 match points or something in the tiebreak.
Was it some crazy dive you did or something?
No, there wasn't. There was the Danish meet. There was a dive. I had 2 dives. I did one on a break point in the second set, which was almost a pathetic attempt to get it back. I had no chance. And then I dived again after an approach, and he missed it in the net. The Danish media called it heroic, and it was so ridiculous in reality, because he missed the ball in the bottom of the net, and I did like a full face plant dive, which was so unnecessary. But there was, in his first match point, I hit one of the best returns I've ever had. Freddie calls it a matrix return, where he did a massive body serve. I'm going to see if I can adjust my camera. And I did like one of the Neo where he just leans back to avoid the bullet. Did this with my racket. And I smacked it so hard right back in the middle. And then we played an unbelievable point where we were both just hitting this shit out of the ball. Like 5-6 shots. I somehow end up winning the point. I think he missed it deep. And I don't know if he had any more match points on his own serve. But yeah, then I ended up winning the match, the tiebreak in a double fault from him. But yeah, it was crazy level.
And the thing about that, we actually were speaking about it at Wimbledon, because it's I was saying, and then I ended up with egg on my face because it happened quite a few times in the main draw. I said I think the most emotional day in tennis is the last round qualies in the majors, and it feels like it's highly emotional on both sides, right? You know, it's like, and especially at Wimbledon because you get a chance from moving. You're moving. There's like a physical thing as well. You're moving from the Bank of England courts at Roehampton to the big dance. You know, it's like
Yeah.
you haven't even made it onto the site at Wimbledon. You know, beforehand, and it
I
just
think it's also the only qualies final that has best of 5 sets in the slams, right?
I think it is. I think it is. So this the drama is big, but it's like obviously the finance, it's players that haven't tended to play too many Grand Slam main draws. And I was saying it almost feels like it's the only time you see people crying tears of happiness. You know, in our sport, you can often see people crying tears of sadness, but I love the emotion that comes out. You know, the tears of happiness emotion. I think there's a one that that's what I love about sport and live sport and what I love about tennis. I love the emotion, the passion. I love the storylines behind it. I love, that what someone's done from the age of 4, all coming out in that moment. And then I said that, and then at Wimbledon we had about 7 different matches where people were crying tears of happiness in the main draw. Kaboli, we had all these different things. It felt like quite an emotional I wasn't there. I didn't actually see the moment when you qualified, but talk us through that. Was there tears of happiness? How big was that emotion at the end of that qualifying match? And how does that compare to the emotion at the end of the second round match against Maciek?
Good question. I don't know. I think it was the same because I was there with my family, or my dad and my nephew was there for the qualifying final as well. And obviously it was the first time I qualified for a slam in the 5-set match, tiebreak in the 5th set. So hugely emotional there. And I guess it was the same, just even more against Mahat. Many more of my family members came out, and there was the stadium was filled with Danish fans. Yeah, I guess even bigger against Mahat because it was such a big win. I honestly have a little bit of a hard time remembering everything that happened. So I kind of I see the videos and I was like, whoa, did that happen? Did I do that? And did I really cry that much? And I can only say it was an unbelievable experience, but in both of those matches.
Very cool. And then you said something earlier, August, which I always think is quite an interesting one. And I think it's quite well known in the tennis world that there's a big difference between futures and challengers. I think it's probably it's the least subtle difference. Let's say it's the kind of biggest difference that people tend to see in professionalism. There's then the difference between, I guess, challengers and not so much Grand Slams, because a lot of challenger players are playing Grand Slams, but challengers and ATP events. But then you have the difference between that and playing top 10 players, and you then went on to play Alex De Minaur, who he's a top 10 player in almost every category, De Minaur is. What did you notice the difference was, if any, coming up against De Minaur?
I would say what I've noticed is the difference practicing with Holger as well, and seeing a bunch of his matches, playing against De Minaur, Mahat in a lot of the same ways, is that they can maintain an extremely high level throughout the entire matches. And I think that's what the biggest difference is between challenger players and ATP players, is that they can just maintain a really, really, really high level throughout an entire match, many weeks of the year. And Alex De Minaur did that better than any other guy I've played against. He's got his qualities of defensive tennis and then being able to counter so quickly as soon as I leave a ball short. So he was probably the fastest player I've ever played against, but that wasn't what was most impressive about him. I thought the most impressive thing was the quality with which he got the balls back when I was trying to hit a big forehand. He would hit it back so flat and deep that I was neutralized immediately, and he got way more returns back with higher quality than any of the other guys that I'd played against. He gave me next to no free points in his own service games. So he's just, him, Holger, Thomas are doing the basics so much better than all the other guys. And that's what's the most impressive and the most difficult, I think, looking past all the, the highlight points that you see sometimes with take Alex De Minaur, for example, when he's just running from the back of the court to catch a drop shot and leave it as an unbelievable pass. Yeah, sure, that's amazing, an amazing feat of physical strength and quickness, but that's not what makes him a top 10 player in the world. It's that focus to play at that high level all the time that just strangles his opponents at the end. That's what's really impressive, in my opinion.
I think he would be in my top 3 worst nightmares to play, I think.
Yeah.
Like when I think about the male players, I kind of think maybe Alcaraz will give you a little bit, you lose focus, but it feels to me De Minaur is that guy. And we've had a couple of people on the podcast recently. I think Taro Daniel and maybe Tristan Boyer as well. They both picked out when they played De Minaur on how difficult he was to play. He's an ultimate professional. Now, I'm conscious of your time, and I want to just ask you a couple more things, and we've got to do our quick fire round before you go, which is tradition of control the controllables. But you then went on after Wimbledon almost more impressively to then play a challenger. Tell us a little bit about that period, from a relatively small tennis country. I know Holger is obviously leading the way on that. You've had Caroline for many years. I remember when Freddie won Wimbledon in 2012, they all went crazy. I would imagine that there was a bit of a difference in your world all of a sudden after that Wimbledon run. So talk us through that period of how you handled that, enjoyed that, but then also how you reset to be able to move over to the hard courts and then winning the challenger in Granby last week, which is highly impressive to be able to back that up as well.
Tennis in Denmark has received a lot more attention. We have Clara Tauson as well, who has her career high ranking right now in the top 20. So I think tennis has become way more popular in recent years with Holger and Clara's success. I received so much attention and sweet messages in the days following Wimbledon. It was a little bit overwhelming in many ways as well. So I was almost happy to just get back into the groove of playing tournaments. I was very aware of that. I wanted to keep doing the same things that had given me success in Wimbledon, to keep doing those things in Granby regardless of the results. And I almost lost the first round against James Watt, but I stuck to my guns. I ended up winning the tournament. And I was really pleased with, what you said as well, continuing the run after success in a smaller tournament. I keep trying to remind myself that it's not about the results, it's about that continuous progress, because I still have a long way to go in many different aspects of my game. And then last week I lost the second round against Marc Layal. I had a lot of things I could have done better in that match, but again, I'm really happy that I tried to stick with my tennis identity, with what has been working for me. It didn't work in that match, and then I have to accept that outcome as well. My game is really risky in many ways because I try and be really aggressive. So some days I'm just gonna miss more. Some days I'm gonna play amazing, it looks amazing. Other days I'm gonna look a little bit foolish. But it's that being okay with that side of it too is gonna be so important for me moving forward, especially because that's what historically I haven't been great at up until now, and that's kind of the narrative I'm trying to change for myself.
And what does the rest of 2025 look like for you? Are you a goal setter? What can you expect, or what are we going to see from you for the rest of 2025?
I'm gonna be playing in Chicago, the US Open qualies. We got Davis Cup. Depending on how the US Open goes, I will play a tournament on clay before Davis Cup. After Davis Cup, I haven't made any tournament plans yet. I was thinking of maybe going to Asia. I'm gonna be losing a lot of points this week, so we'll see where my ranking is at after Davis Cup. I don't know. I actually just today I was invited to go on a surf camp for a week with some of my old San Diego friends. So I might do that in October. Pretty excited about that. Yeah, but I don't have any big plans for the rest of the year. In terms of goals, I have some things I've been talking with my team about that I'm not going to share right now, but it doesn't really have to do with the ranking, because usually ranking goals haven't helped me so much. It's put more pressure on me that I haven't been able to handle very well than being a motivating factor. Because the purpose of having a goal is to wake up and be like, okay, yeah, I'm gonna go for this goal today, and that's not really a problem for me. So the chasing the top 100 for the sake of chasing the top 100 isn't something that's hugely exciting to me.
Can I ask you something on that? And I don't want to be responsible for, well, I actually haven't spoke to you now for an hour. I know that I can't touch your mind on this stuff anyway, so I feel fine asking you this. There is that kind of talk of the elusive top 100, that kind of holy grail in our sport. It's kind of a bit of it's maybe a little bit outdated, I think, but it's a bit funny. But I think the one that actually is interesting for me is at 27 years old, you being someone who is getting closer to that sort of ranking. Back in my day, that was almost deemed as impossible. Like it was almost, and, I'm kind of 18 years older than you, but it was like, no, you can't. If you haven't broken top 100 by the time you're 21 or 22, forget about it. Whereas one thing I do like about how our sport has evolved and normalized is that there is these stories, and this is why if I'm honest, it's why I really wanted to get you on this show as well, because I think your story, and it's exceeded my expectations even more so in terms of how you've talked about it. But I think it's such an important message for people to understand in our sport, of like, you chip away, you keep going, you have your ups, your downs, but you keep progressing, you keep sticking to the process, you get good people around you, and look where it can potentially take you with time. Is that something that you are comfortable with, within our sport? And is that something that, I guess, but really what's your take on that elusive top 100 and maybe the age associated to that?
Yeah, it's the same question that a lot of the Danish reporters asked me after Wimbledon. Saying, you're 27 years old. You're very, very old. Why are you breaking through now? Or why are you having success now?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't have a good answer for this, man. I think everyone progresses at a different rate. So for me, getting better later is just my path. I don't know. It can be made a general notion of the right way to do things. So I don't have a good answer. All I can say from my perspective is that I believe in my own abilities. I believe in my chances of becoming an even better tennis player than I am today. And then by the end of my career, when that happens, hopefully a long way down the road, I can afterwards evaluate and see if I'm satisfied with it.
I would have a slightly different spin on that as well, in terms of when people look at it. For me, if I was speaking to the Danish press, or if I got asked this question about you, you did 5 years of college. You've actually only been playing on the tour for about 3 or 4 years. It's like, it's a very, like, I'll share a quick story with me. I went to college. I came out of college, and so I would have been 22 when I came out. And I then, when I just turned 23, I won my first Futures singles, and I won my first Challenger doubles. So I was top 200 in doubles, and I was maybe 650, 700 singles. And the head of the federation at that time said, Dan, you're 23 years old. You're only 650, 700 in the world. It's past for you. It's gone. I think you should focus on doubles. And at that time, I guess you take those words a little bit. I maybe didn't have much direction at that time, but it was like when I look back at that, that was like 7 months, 8 months after I'd come out of college. So people were putting an age on it without seeing the context, and I think we do that in our sport a lot, actually. When we look at your story, you're still just getting started. For me, when I hear your story, I'm like, well, yeah, you're just very early stages of your career, coming out of college and going along that way. And that's the bit that I want people to understand in our sport, anybody that's listening. It's like, stop putting ages on things. And the second point I just want to make, August, and this is my big takeaway from this conversation, is your outlook on it, and your outlook from a very early age has allowed you to go this kind of slower way, and this kind of constant progression. And I think not enough people have the right outlook on it, and they don't have the patience, and they're looking for the quick fix. They're looking to change coaches all the time. They're looking to do this. They're getting stressed. And ultimately that's what kills them, because the losing kills them and they can't handle it. And then they have very short careers, and they're unable to constantly put that daily work in. So albeit that's normal for you, I don't think that is normal in our world. And I think it's a highly impressive trait. I think it's something that's going to just continue driving you forward over the next few years. And I wish you the very best of luck with it.
Yeah, I like your spin on the answer of the first question there. I'm sorry about your experience with the guy from the Federation. He sounds like a real asshole.
Yeah, that's how we've evolved. I think that's how the sport evolved. I wouldn't be the only one, right? That would be kind of how it was viewed. But you've been a star. Do you have 2 or 3 minutes for the quick fire round?
Yes.
What does control the controllables mean to you?
It means taking care of all the things that I can take care of. That's such a bad answer. It means accept and prepare really well. So prepare your strings, grips, all the equipment stuff, sleep. Don't worry about the weather, the level of the opponent, the fans. Only worry about the things that is within your control.
A bit of an apt question. What's your favorite match snack?
Match snack? What's that?
A snack that you would have when you're
what's my favorite in-match snack? I understand.
Snack, yeah.
It's got to be the electrolyte gummies. Amazing.
Oh, do they have
Amazing.
them now? Okay.
Yeah, I'll tell you what I hate too. I hate bananas. Bananas are the worst thing. I eat it a lot, but I hate it so much.
My daughter is with you. She claims that she's allergic to bananas. She's not, but she can't bear them anywhere near her. If you could pick any player in history to play doubles with, who are you picking and why?
I gotta pick Roger, just because he's so cool.
Did you see him at Wimbledon, or had you left by then?
No,
he rocked up.
Yeah.
He rocked up, and it was just like everyone was.
You got to be there for the second week in order to have that honor.
So this is the goal for next year. Forget the ranking, forget the money, but get to the second week to meet Roger Federer.
Exactly. It's all about meeting Roger.
What are some of the interesting thoughts that pop into your head whilst playing a high-stakes tennis match? Where does your mind go?
Usually it's on, okay, what am I trying to accomplish now? And sometimes it goes away a little bit, and I'll notice, like in Wimbledon, for example, there were some fans that had painted the Danish flag on their faces, and then I'll notice that a little bit, and then my mind goes there, flutters a little bit. Sometimes I'm looking at, that's a nice cloud, but usually I can stay with what I'm hoping to do for the next point.
I get a feeling we might get a similar answer this time, but if you could steal one shot from another player and add it to your game, who would it be and why?
Can I say a guy with a two-handed backhand?
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
If I could have Novak's returns, I think I'd be pretty dangerous.
What's your ranking? I'll give you Novak's returns tomorrow. What's your ranking in 6 months' time?
For sure, top 100. For sure. Maybe top 50 if I have Novak's return. Though I don't know.
If you could play one match again that you won or lost, and you're playing for the experience that you had, that you want to relive, what would it be?
I got destroyed by Dimitrov really bad in the first ATP tournament I played in San Diego, like 0-1 or 1-0. Okay. I would love a rematch of that one.
You're not going to get it at US Open, unfortunately. He's just pulled out today, apparently.
Really? Such a shame.
Yeah, he's not having a lot of luck. But will Holger Rune win a Grand Slam?
I hope so.
And will we see Caroline Wozniacki back on the courts after she's had her third child this week?
Yeah, maybe for 1 or 2 tournaments. I don't know. I'm going to say yes, hopefully. She's great for the sport.
There'd be some effort. If there's some effort if she did.
Yeah.
This one, easiest question of the day. Roger or Rafa?
Yeah, easiest question of the day. All respects to Rafa still, but I'm a Roger guy.
Serena or Venus?
I got to say Venus because she's still playing. She's still out there.
We came back. Unbelievable. Medical timeout or not? Yeah. Should there be a medical timeout allowed or not?
A medical timeout? Yeah, of course.
Many people say no. They're
okay.
used too strategically.
Yeah, well, I don't mind.
Brilliant answers as it has been the whole way through. August, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.